Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for my second live stream of the day. Along with me is my producer and
I
co-host.
think it was somebody else who live streamed earlier today. I think this is Direwolf's first live stream, actually.
I know what you're talking about. Today's producer and my co-host today is Fox.
Today's producer, what?
This may be his last time. We'll do it based on his performance on this show.
Jesus. God, I didn't realize I was on such a short plank here. All right,
Yes.
well, I guess I will do my best, which, as you guys know, it's kind of mediocre.
All right. Well, today's
Yeah, what are we talking about today, Dyer?
this is a Dire discusses, and today's topic is C.H.A.Z.
C.H.A.Z?
Not C.H.A.Z. the guy, like C.H.A.Z. the place, which is the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone that was set up by quote street artists and Black Lives Matter and Antifa. But if you read the articles about it, a lot of the left wing media are saying George Floyd protesters. But,
yeah, so there's a problem because I think CNN was trying to say that it didn't exist, that there was no such thing, but they also said that it was peaceful.
Okay, it's none of those things. It actually does exist, and it is not peaceful. CNN, as per the usual, gets every part of a story wrong. Good job.
They actually, one of their camera crew got attacked going into it earlier today. I did not find the clip for that. Maybe I'll find it while we're doing the show here.
CNN's camera crew was attacked with peacefulness.
Yes. Well,
It was.
which is only like the third time that's happened, like the last week, where they'll open up a segment and be like, "It's peaceful," and then they'll get hit with something.
I'm starting to think they don't understand the meaning of words.
Well,
Not
that
specific words.
was Acosta earlier this week when he told the press secretary that they were throwing bricks peacefully at Lafayette Park.
Wait, 15 minutes. Streamlabs took a dump for some reason. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, the Streamlabs, after we went, I told it I did not want to update when I went live for the 30-minute waiting, and then 15 minutes into that, it decided that it was going to update anyways. It said "fuck you," and it turned off, updated itself, and I had to restart the waiting stream.
Yeah, I updated my Streamlabs earlier today, and I was sweating bullets. So, anyways, what happened was, what city was this again? It was Seattle, right?
Yeah, so this is middle Seattle here.
So there's a 6-block zone in Seattle around a police precinct. Now that police precinct received a threat from, I guess, Black Lives Matter or rioters of some sort. They're going to attack the police precinct, and they're going to burn it down. And the police, with this forewarning, knowing where the target was and what was going to happen, they chose, instead of protecting the police precinct and possibly, they decided to run and avoid the conflict like any good police officer would.
Actually, Dyer, did you see the update from earlier today?
Oh, what's that?
Or maybe it was, what's today's date? Is it today? No, it was yesterday. So I actually have a clip here. So the Seattle police chief, because as many people thought, is what you said, that the police cowardly abandoned the precinct. The police chief actually has a slightly different story. We can take a listen to that. Can you see and hear my screen? Well, can you see it at least? See if you can.
I can see.
On Capitol Hill. Listen.
I want to update you all on the situation at the East Precinct. The decision to board up the precinct, our home, the first precinct I worked in, was something I have been holding off. You should know, leaving the precinct was not my decision. You fought for days to protect it. I asked you to stand on that line, day in and day out, to be pelted with projectiles, to be screamed at, threatened, and in some cases hurt. Then to have a change of course nearly 2 weeks in, it seems like an insult to you and our community. Ultimately, the city had other plans for the building and relented to severe public pressure. I'm angry about how this all came about. I understand that my comments in this message may be leaked to the public, but I'm not concerned about that.
It was.
I
It's a
stand by
public
what I'm
statement.
saying.
No. This was a her specific message to the officers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We had solid information to believe that anti-government groups would destroy the precinct once we left, whether through vandalism or arson.
So later in the video, best part.
We have heard that there are armed people patrolling the streets near 12th and Pine. Of course, this is very concerning, especially because we don't know who these people are. We've also received report that these armed people may be demanding payment from business owners in exchange for some of that protection. We've also heard that they may be demanding to see identification from people who live in the area. This is not legal.
Papers, please.
And we've asked anyone who may be experiencing this to come forward and file a police report so that we can investigate these crimes.
Didn't they say that they couldn't go in that area?
So yeah, we'll get into that, but I just want to clear that up. That it was the police. It has since been cleared up that the police did not abandon that by their choice. They were forced out by the city.
That's beside the point, though. They were still forced to leave. I'm not blaming the police officers.
You called the police officers cowardly. I was trying to clarify that they were not.
Fair enough. All right, fair enough. But so the government then is being cowardly by forcing them to leave.
There you go.
That is the same police chief who was saying that during COVID that she wouldn't be able to respond to like assaults.
Yeah, her history aside.
Yeah, she has a history. Regardless, though, this is C.H.A.Z. And after the police left, I guess, ordered by the cowardly government. Of course, the police precinct was taken over, and all the stuff inside of it also now available to the rioters, and I want to call them protesters, that took it over.
Yeah, the left did a really good job of Orwelling that word into like your head, I always say protesters first and then correct myself because they're not protesters, they're fucking rioters.
I think we should just call them terrorists, though.
Well, there's a distinction between rioters and terrorists. Well, some of them may be terrorists in Antifa, but not all of them are Antifa. Some of them are just your useful idiots. So
they're no longer just going around destroying everything in a riot
in an orderly fashion.
No, in a riot. Now they have erected barriers, are doing checkpoints, and going and shaking down local businesses, and with the threats of violence. So I think that's more moving towards terrorism than a riot.
It's certainly an occupation of sorts.
It's almost like, though, it's kind of funny. It's been noted multiple times. This is not a new take, but so these socialist types, they kick out the government officials from that area, and the first thing they do is create a government.
Yeah, so basically the C.H.A.Z has gone through extremely accelerated communism. We're talking about compressing decades into a few hours. So hours after they took over this area, they immediately put up border controls, very strict border controls and walls, and started checking documents. Yeah. That's not very free and peace living, is it? They also recreated their own police force, which was much more violent and brutal than the previous police force. They're also running out of food. After about 2 days, they started running out of food. They're also running out of regular basic necessities, and also rape, which seems to be a staple.
They're running out of rape?
No, they've got a surplus of rape. They're running out of the other stuff. That seems to be a staple of communist takeovers, is there's a lot of rape. We haven't quite gotten to the death stage yet. There hasn't been a mass killing or culling of the herd quite yet, but
it's only the third day. Give it time.
Yeah, we'll see. They might have skipped that step. I don't know. And then they're also basically entirely reliant on foreign aid, which is a real staple hallmark of other communist nations, where they have foreign aid from other countries that are usually giving them the money to wage a proxy war rather than out of altruism. And the C.H.A.Z is also receiving foreign aid from people who are more looking to do a proxy ideological battle rather than just giving it to them out of the goodness of their heart. As you can see from some of these pictures, it also kind of just looks like Fallout. Let's see. Oh, here's the garden. We'll go back to that. Yeah, I didn't get enough good pictures.
Okay.
We got some other clips and stuff, but yeah, it's basically, and then they're also, like you said, they're extorting the citizenry. There was some again, the reports of suppressing the media. We had a CNN clip later on, maybe, where they're like attacking the CNN crew, and so I mean that's really extremely accelerated communism. It plays out the exact same way every time. It's just C.H.A.Z is playing this out over the course of 72 hours instead of like a couple of years or decades. But it's just like, it's all the exact same stuff, where also they became authoritarian. Like you said, they overthrew the regular government, and then they've just instituted their own government, which is a lot more strict.
Without any of the resources.
Yeah, with no resources.
So,
and rape.
Not that socialism ever works and will always have these problems, but they had even less chance for any kind of level of success by trying to do so in the middle of a metropolitan area. There's no way they could like set up a commune with these 6 blocks or have any kind of natural resources to which survive on. They would. So this is. I know it's funny that this represents the accelerated socialism, and this is how probably socialism in its pure form, in the sense that people are starving and are being are starving and are subject to violent oppression. Yes, this is very much communism in its purest form, but this is, let's be honest, this is just Occupy Wall Street 2.0. We already know what's going to happen. Is it going to be eventually they will leave when the amount of feces and trash make it physically impossible for them to stay?
Well, so the city actually has been also supporting them, and they sent in porta potties as well. So they may be able to withstand the poo tide for a little bit longer. If this were to happen in some place like Los Angeles, I mean, maybe they'll survive it for a long time. Those people are used to living in like knee deep.
But what do they think is going to happen? That this is going to cause a revolution that's going to overthrow the government? They are insane. This is just them LARPing. That's all it is.
Well, and look at this supply list that they need. They need clothes, ice, cigarettes, flashlights, body lotion, shoes, bedding. Like I tweeted out earlier, like, if only there was a system of organizing labor and resources in such a way that demanded goods were supplied as a function of the demand and exchanged at a rate dependent on their supply. If only somebody could come up with a way of doing that, these poor Antifa people would not be short on ice and body lotion.
So Blackpaw, Craig Blackpaw, brought up that the separatist uprising in Bavaria, the time just prior to Hitler, when communists declared Bavaria as a sovereign commune. So he sends a link to that. I think the problem is, the difference between that and this is, the vast majority of America, not counting the mainstream media, think these people are insane. Even people on the left think this is stupid.
Well, I think that it needs to be allowed to continue. I think the big question is this real communism? I don't see why it wouldn't be real communism. They would have a really hard time explaining to me why they chose to implement not real communism. So I say that, for all those historical times when they didn't actually, that wasn't a real communism. I think that this is real communism. So let's let it go for as long as it can. And let's show America where it is that the left and Antifa would like us to go. If they have their chance, this is their sales pitch. Let's let them do their thing and explain. Show us the benefits.
Yes. being as this is in a Democrat state in a Democrat city with Democrat voters who have voted in this kind of insanity and people who would allow this to happen, I say this is your just desserts. But also, this is a great example, like you said, for America to see how stupid and insane the ideas of the left are, how unsuccessful they are, and it's a good opportunity for them to find out that. Since they've been claiming, oh, if only we were in power, we could make everything work. They're finding out, no, even when you're in power, you're even dumber. You're even less capable. No, you wouldn't be able to make the system work just because it's you. Doesn't mean you're special. In fact, you're actually way dumber than people who have tried before you, and you're not going to be successful.
Well,
I think it'll be a great example for America.
Well, and let's watch, because I think that even part of that, I know you're kind of going along with it just for the sake of the the response there, but that response kind of feeds into the idea. It kind of buys their premise, right? That they actually think that they've got better ideas that they want to implement. When the reality, we'll watch a video here in a second, is that they know that they don't actually have better ideas. They just want the power for themselves. So let's take a watch of the video of their secret police that they've got here walking around, jackbooting everybody. So this is C.H.A.Z. Night 1. You guys probably seen this video, but you got C.H.A.Z. Night 1. You got somebody there doing some graffiti. Then,
you don't know the owner of this place? The owner that's actually being nice and letting us stay here?
Oh, God.
You forgot, we are the police of this community now.
Okay, so we are the police of this community now. They the whole point of C.H.A.Z. was to kick out the police. What did they make Night 1? New police.
Police.
So it really wasn't about that they had a better idea of how to do it, that they, we got a much better idea than police. It was that they wanted to be the police themselves.
Yep. It's so ridiculous.
So we'll keep watching this with low volume, but you guys can watch the new police and how they're a little bit more brutal to the black man than the regular police were, perhaps. We'll keep watching.
So
we are.
So
go ahead.
Right, but people
they got upset because police officers, some of them which are black, are committing acts of violence against black men and women for any reason, but they highlight unarmed and nonviolent crimes they're being attacked for. Well, this is the guy who is unarmed doing a nonviolent crime, and we have a police officer using violence against him and has guns. This is exactly what they were protesting against. In fact, this video could have been a video that could have spurred riots.
Yeah, it's you basically now you've exchanged your police and a system of justice that if something goes awry, if the police are enforcing the laws of the duly elected officials, if they start enforcing those in the wrong way, there is a full legal apparatus around rectifying that situation. In this instance, there's no accountability whatsoever. If, as you guys are about to see, there's some, and he's down. If you just get pummeled by some thugs calling themselves the cops, well, where's your recourse? Whose police chief is he going to call?
Yeah, who's going to arrest the bad officer here? Nobody. And there's no requirement for them to have body cams. There's no one holding them accountable. You've just made police officers without accountability and any kind of law they have to follow. Congratulations,
it's almost like society had solved some of these problems. Now again, there's little bits that get in the cracks. We won't deny that. But by and large, there is, it works out most of the time. 375 million police interactions last year. Only 1,000 of them ended up in a death. Single digit of those ended in a unarmed black man dying. And you've got in this case, where you have a handful of interactions, single digit handful of interactions, and they're all violent. It's yeah, it's a little bit different when you just got thugs and warlords. They're calling him a warlord going around, beating people up. Somebody else also pointed out that it was it's kind of interesting that Antifa, as soon as they took over this like kind of commune area, they immediately turned on each other to protect the wealthy landowners, saying, well, no, this wealthy landowner is being nice to us, and so we're going to defend his private property, and you're going to get beat up, even though we just seized all this private property.
And well, at the same time, they're destroying immediately, just like every socialist and communist country does. They destroy the market. So the local businesses in the area, not only are they highly taxing them by going and shaking them down, but they're also
I don't know if that's called a tax. I think that's called a shake. Tax might be
that was the joke.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's why I said tax jokingly, and then following up with shakedown. But they're going to destroy the businesses. Like, they're going in and like just claiming the hotel for themselves and not allowing them to do any actual business. The hotel, if this continued, would just go out of business because it's being occupied.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen when all businesses in the area are destroyed by them?
Yeah. So this is not the hotel that was in the C.H.A.Z. I think this one was in Minneapolis. I think that hotel that you're talking about was in Minneapolis too. I think it was the same one. So this is not the C.H.A.Z., but this is an example of another occupation. Was this hotel in Minneapolis? And you guys can kind of see the destruction going on here. Oh, we'll let that play off in the background too. But yeah, you guys have seen the. Oh wait, I'm not showing it. There we go. You guys have seen the pictures from the C.H.A.Z., which we'll keep showing around, but it's the same kind of idea where it's Fallout World. Everything's broken. They're just duct taping stuff together. Spray painting on everything. Everything's makeshift. It's a real decline from the as bad as Western civilization and capitalism may be. I say that facetiously. This certainly looks a lot worse.
So Howie the Zitzer said, "Jesus, Fox, you did to that joke what Raz does people who don't pay."
That's right. Fucking beat the shit out of it.
Okay, so now I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. So, doesn't the police have the responsibility to the community to stop this destruction of business and assault on random individuals in the area? Don't they have a responsibility to the community that pays their salary to go in there and get rid of these people?
Certainly they do, and I would be demanding a bit of a rebate next year, saying, hey, I paid some taxes, and the idea wasn't that I pay taxes and you guys defended me during the good times and abandoned me during the bad times. The deal was that you're here all year. You're not just a fair weather friend there.
Yeah. Ideally, it would be nice, but unlikely, but nice if the people, the voters in that area, or people who could be voters, actually started voting, saw the bullshit that's happening right now. Like, you know what? I want a completely different government who think a different way and will not let this happen. And also, I want a different police force, and I want to elect a different police chief because of what's happening here. But it's probably not going to happen. What's more likely to happen is they're like, wow, this place is terrible, even though my votes kind of made it this way. And they're just going to go to a different state and just vote the same way there.
Well, see, the problem is that if the left gets what they want, right? Abolish the police everywhere. Okay, well, now you got to do private security, right? Well, the problem is
that's not going to happen everywhere.
Well, no. Well, just hold on. We're just going through this kind of, I guess, thought experiment.
Hypothetical.
Yeah. So you get rid of the police. Now you got to do, private security. The problem is that we're already at that point, except for we're still paying for the police. But when it really matters, they're not there. So you still need private security, but you also have to pay for the police. It's again, I think I said this a few months ago, but we're basically living in Ancapistan, but we're still paying for the Republic. It's the worst of both systems. I don't like the ANCAP model because I'm like, well, I kind of like the idea of having the liberty to not have to worry about certain things. I can kind of delegate that out to representatives, and I argue about the tax hikes and stuff like that. But in general, I appreciate delegating the responsibility to handle some of those things off to a centralized authority. Not everything. I know, man. I'm probably driving some of the ANCAPs crazy right now. But under ANCAP, you gotta like worry about all these like basic preservation of necessities, which is a tremendous waste of time in my opinion. But in the current model, I have to pay for those services. I have to be under this repressive regime and have some of my liberties limited. But at the same time, I don't get the benefit of that, and so I'm still in the position where, well, now I gotta focus on how do I defend these basic necessities, defending my property and stuff like that, and I gotta take that on to myself. The people that I delegated to it, they certainly took my money, but they are not actually taking on that responsibility. That's one of the problems is. This is what you're seeing in Seattle is they're living in Ancapistan, but they're still paying for the Republic, which is absurd. It's got to be one or the other.
I have a feeling a lot of people are not paying taxes.
Well, the people in Seattle are.
No, in this particular area.
Oh yeah.
Don't even talk about the end caps.
Yes, Krieg. Only one bag of Sprite, Krieg. One bag. Krieg, if you wanna hop on here too, you DM me on Skype. We'll pull you in here.
Absolutely. So Trump's comments, right? Trump tweeted out saying that the state needed to take back this land, or he was going to. I think
he was just gonna like steamroll him with compassion or something.
I think that's an empty threat, honestly, and I think it's in his best interest to let this problem fester in Seattle. My personal opinion.
Well, like I said, I think that this needs to be allowed to continue to the extent that they're not hurting people. Although there is
people
rape.
Are being raped.
Yes, there's rape, which is wherever two or more leftists are gathered, rape will be there. I think it's a psalm or a Bible verse. I don't remember. But that seems to be pretty much a staple of all leftist activity in America, is that there's always rape involved. I don't even know if you can reset the clock at this point. I think right now the clock's just broken. But there's that. There's businesses being extorted. To a certain extent. It's Seattle, so let's be real honest here. I don't think that there's a lot of Republicans in this area. Of the 500 residences that are in the C.H.A.Z. zone, I think I can imagine that precisely 0 of them are Republicans, given the statistics of Seattle. But it is Americans, but they also kind of voted for this. They kind of invited this sort of thing in. Certainly, the city council allowed it to happen, especially with the abandonment of the precinct. Because if you rewind the clock a little bit, you go back 7 days and the police don't abandon that precinct, free C.H.A.Z. does not arise. It arose only because the police pulled out, and the police only pulled out because the city made them, and the city made them because the people voted for those kind of representatives.
And honestly, I think that this destruction is not going to turn the voters away from voting for these people. I think the Democrats are more like. I think enough people of the voters are unaffected by this that they're going to be happy.
Howitzer has made the transitive statement. He has proposed that since commies are not people, and there is commies being raped, that no one is being raped. I will not.
I see no problem with that.
I will not condone that formula, but I will not disavow or condemn it either.
if your premises were accurate, or
yeah, I
then
mean
that is a sound
in
logical
those
argument.
statements, like certainly the first two are true. So I mean, I got the logic would dictate, but I won't go so far as to say
Oh,
that. Oh jeez. Where were we at?
Trump's statements
yes.
about whether or not he should do something about this.
No, yeah,
I think he shouldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, just keep it going. I think America needs to know what does this look like. They have 4 years now, and very much recently burning down several cities to prove the point. This is what they want. So let's see what they want. As awful as it is for Seattle, again, I don't think there's a lot of Republicans there. Don't think there's a lot of conservatives there. I think by and large, the people voted for this. Maybe not directly. Maybe this wasn't the words on the ballot.
The commies voted for it, not the people.
Oh, that's right.
The distinction.
The people, the commie people, like the commies. The commies. There you go. The people of communism. The communists voted for this. So it's kind of. I brought this up last week. I'm kind of tired of people hitting themselves in the face, and then for some reason, like, I am responsible for feeling bad about them hitting themselves in the face, and like I'm supposed to take responsibility for the fact that they're hitting themselves in the face, and like somehow it's my fault that they keep hitting themselves in the face. And so I think this is Seattle hitting itself in the face, and I'm not gonna stop them from doing that. And I think it would be good for America to again continue seeing what is it that happens when they start hitting themselves in the face, which is another reason why I think like the media by and large is not covering this as heavily as they want. A lot of the coverage from this is coming from Twitter and people that are on the ground. And like I said, CNN had a crew out a little bit ago. Fox had a crew out a couple of days ago. But mostly the media is not talking about it a ton, or they're calling it, again, as you said, a George Floyd protest, even though
it has nothing to do with George Floyd.
Yeah, I don't see how like the wholesale takeover of 6 city blocks by a bunch of like white trust fund kids. I don't see how that's a George Floyd protest, but I don't know. I guess I could be wrong. I don't think I am.
I don't think so. There's no. Are they even talking about George Floyd? No, they're not.
Well, actually, I got another clip here of what happens when you do try to talk about George Floyd. We had this poor woman here. So this was, I think this was earlier today or yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. And so you got count again. It's not a race thing, but it kind of is. Yeah, this is supposed to be like, again, this is supposed to be like Black Lives Matter, like taking over the city to like get rid of the cops, right? Like that's what they're trying to sell this as. But like, look how many white people there is. I mean, this is really just a bunch of white people who are like, oh, I'm gonna like take over the city and like claim that it's for Black Lives Matter. But there is a black woman here that we're gonna listen to in a second, and she kind of calls it out a little bit that, hey, this Black Lives Matter was supposed to be for a thing, and you guys kind of turned it into another thing. And all the white people are not happy with this black lady telling them that they are hijacking her movement.
Follow us. You know what the thing is? You have hijacked it. You have taken the meaning away.
You cannot portray the image because of me.
What you like, go for it. Don't try to shut the black community out.
I'm black myself.
Oh, but you have your phone.
Whoa, so you're not black? You're not black?
Yeah.
What am I?
The thing about it is, the bickering and back and forth. What kind of change do you get from bickering and back and forth? Matter of fact, let me take this motherfucking mask off. What kind of change do you get from bickering back and forth? We can all check this out. I'm not done talking, boy. I'm not done. Brady Flex on the mic. I'm not done. You gonna let me talk? I got the mic. Push. Like I said, no, I ain't done.
I love this woman, and I mean, I probably don't believe any of the things that she believes in, but she's at least like trying to stay like ideologically consistent. Like, hey, this started off as a thing for Black Lives Matter movement, and you guys turned into this whole other thing. And she's trying to explain that to them, and they don't want to hear any of it. Like, give us the mic back. And you saw they both did it. So the guy did it to her, and then she did it back to him, where they both said, "You're not black," even though they were black. And that's this like thing on the. We were talking about this before the show. That this idea of like erasing somebody's identity, that the left has, and. Dyer and I were talking about this before the show. Is the left has this idea of they always accuse the right of like you're doing something. It's erasing trans lives. You're erasing black lives. You're erasing someone's lived experience, or women or whatever. You're erasing them, and we're like, what the hell are you talking? Like, what do you mean erasing them? What the hell does that even mean? And what we kind of figured out is like, oh, well. I don't understand what that really means. That's not a tactic that I would use to try and like erase somebody, but that's clearly a tactic that the left uses, and so they try to accuse us of erasing people right before they do. And you could see that in this interaction where that black guy tries to erase her by saying, "Well, you're not really black," and then she turns it back on him and goes, "You're not really black." So I guess you got two black white people up there arguing with each other, trying to erase each other. But that's like where that's coming from. That's a tactic that the left actually has, and if once you realize that, you start noticing that everywhere, where the left will try to, and they do it through relabeling, right? So they will try to erase your identity by relabeling you as something else. They do this with conservative blacks, conservative gays. Okay, like you're not really that thing because your ideology doesn't match with it. So we're gonna pull that label off of you and erase your identity, and that's what these two people are doing to each other, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. In their mind, you are all people of a certain group are the same thing. They all think the same way. They're all one homogenous group, and if you don't believe those things, then you're not really part of the group. And it's not about skin color or sex. It's actually about their belief system that makes you what you are, apparently.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. You guys could hear what she was saying. I'm sorry, I wasn't sharing the video actually earlier, so I'll replay it without the sound while Dyer's talking. Go ahead.
Okay,
Dyer.
but yeah, so they're erasing the large percentage of people who are black, who are conservative. They're not allowed to exist. They're not allowed to be black, which seems that's a pretty fucking racist thing to say or to think. That's the implication of what they're saying.
Yeah. But you also got in general, like back to like this current situation, is you got Antifa has, they've decided, well, this was the perfect opportunity, like, Black Lives Matter and Floyd's death and all that stuff. Like, that was a perfect opportunity to have us a little revolution and take over some city blocks here. And this woman's like, well, hold on a second. That wasn't, what is this? That wasn't the deal. She'll go on to say, you guys are out there rioting and like, vandalizing stuff, which I kind of like her because she's got some self-control. Again, probably don't believe any, like probably
Be
no
gone from me, you soy boy beta cup. The transaction is complete.
Oh boy.
Keep fighting the good fight, Dyer and Fox. The commies can't win as long as we have the Sprite, and the guns. Good night.
Thank you very much for $100, Craig. Much appreciated. Craig, hit us up if you want to hop on tonight or tomorrow. Let me know. Always invited. Yes, so definitely we'll keep that Sprite locked up. Keep those guns.
We can only win. We can only win though if our Sprite are in bags. If we put it in bottles, we've already lost.
Absolutely. There could be anything in those bags. That's dangerous.
Probably. Let's be honest. It's probably urine.
Probably. But again, I kind of this is somebody who I probably don't have a lot of ideological overlap with, but she's like I said, she'll go on to say, she doesn't like the rioting, the looting, the graffiti and the destruction, the vandalism. And she's like, hey, like this was supposed to be about George Floyd of Black Lives Matter, and like you guys turned it into this like whole other thing. And I can get behind her on that she wants to demonstrate her ideas in not this way and not a revolution way. And so she's calling out, well, again, as you can kind of see here, a large amount of white people. It's only relevant because the left makes it relevant. But it is relevant that you have a bunch of white liberals that are telling this black person to sit down and shut up, and that her ideals of not having violent riots, that that's, we don't want to hear that. Free C.H.A.Z. Let's get a white guy up there and let's have him talk.
So David Duff says, Direwolf, with them demanding that statues of racists are taken down and street names changed, when will Malcolm X be done?
Like
I don't know.
Every named structure that is named after a person that was born before like 1960, they were probably a racist. Like that's just how that works. Like that's how history works. Nobody's like super satisfied with it, but that's why we live in the present, because I chose to. But
seeing where we were in the past and how, like, when you look at someone who's I look at a caveman, right? And you see how primitive they were and how dumb they were and how stupid humanity was back then. You should be proud that we've gotten to this point. You shouldn't be like trying to erase the fact that at one time humanity was that stupid, right? You should say, wow, this is an example of how we have changed over time. And we can actually point to history and all the lessons and all the battles that led to where we are now, and we can learn from those recorded experiences. Or you could try erasing them, and then we never learn those lessons. Don't pass them down, because history only is effective if it's passed down generation to generation. That knowledge that's gained, if not passed down, is lost. So in a similar way, racist exists and was the norm among the entire world.
Well, and
not one race. The entire world had slavery, had wars based on people's belief systems and their skin colors. We oppressed people based on their skin colors. Black people oppressed white oppressed black, and that was a less evolved, way dumber existence for society. And we have changed. We should be proud of that, and we should learn it and pass it down to generations. Trying to erase it is what they're trying to do. They're trying to erase all of the history and only have the now. And that is how you lose all of your cultural understanding and all the knowledge that was gained throughout history.
Yeah, and it's you look through history as to who was making those advancements, right? So it's like a cultural technology, democracy, the way our republic is set up, the idea of civil liberties and freedom. Those are all like cultural, social technologies that had to be invented, and America's the one that invented that, along with most of the technology that the world uses today. And you kind of look back, through what is relatively recent human history for like recorded human history. We were pretty much stuck for a good 2,000-3,000 years where there wasn't a lot of technological advancement. If there was some great leap in stone architecture or agriculture, it was lost as these societies collapsed. And it really you look back at like what your peak technology was for farming, whatever it was in the 1600s, early 1700s, it really was about that much technology all the way back for 1,000, 2,000 years. Similar with other types of things. Naval technology maybe increased a little bit, but as soon as America pops in, right, we within 200-300 years, we'd basically been technologically stagnant for 2,000 years. America pops in. 200 years later, we're going to the moon. We got the internet 200 or another 50 years after that. We figured out civil liberties and ended slavery, all that stuff in a relatively short period of time after just a really long stretch of stagnant human history. And there was, for some reason, there are a lot of reasons, America was the catalyst to figure out those cultural technologies of freedom and liberty, ending slavery, civil liberties, civil rights. And it's again, the only reason that we have that history to look back on is because it's in the past. We've moved on from that. The only reason why these liberals are able to look back on that through the current lens of, well, that was wrong. Yeah, we know it's wrong. And you know it's wrong because we came up with that. Like, America figured out that it was wrong. Like, this isn't like the left is pretending like they're the ones who just discovered that racism was wrong when they learned it from the American culture. It's about the only value that they've inherited from the American culture is that racism is wrong. And so they're looking back on history saying like, well, that was wrong. Like, yeah, we know it was wrong. That's why we stopped doing it. Like, you didn't stop it from happening. You just learned that it was wrong. And now you're looking back on it, trying to, beat your head against this wall of time that you can't get back to. You can't change what happened. It's just how the past is. But there's just this pretending that they're the first ones to realize that the past is wrong is so inherently inconsistent. It's a paradox.
It's also foolish the idea that they want to have historical figures. Any historical figure that we're allowed to remember has to have been perfect. But not a single one of their heroes was perfect either. There is no perfect human. I can say that with complete confidence, that any person that has done anything good in history has also had bad things about them. A lot of the bad things that they're recognizing are things that were cultural norms. That all of society, it was probably a systemic problem throughout all of society, and that is not unique to them, and that their accomplishments are still worth noting and remembering, despite them being what all humans are, flawed.
Yeah. David Duff wants to remind us that Britain was doing a pretty good job on the fight for ending the slave trade before America, and I will agree with that. Britain was our, that was our ideological legacy. America came from them. They had some problems. I think America did it a lot better, but certainly most of the good ideas that America had came from the Western values that England had. Sargon was bringing that up a few days ago. He said, some people are trying to say like America, they're a European colonies. You're not a European colony. Your legacy, you're not a European colony. Your legacy is not Europe. Your legacy is England. You were an English colony. And he's like, you rebel scum, you broke off, but that there's something different about what England and Britain was doing that wasn't European, and they certainly have a good legacy of being that light of civilization throughout the world. And then America picked that up and ran with it a lot faster than they did.
For the same reason, we shouldn't be, forgetting and throwing down the memory hole, or disparaging the existence of these people throughout history that helped make America America because of their flaws. We shouldn't discount or throw out Europe as being, completely as being a failure that shouldn't have, that we should not remember either, because they were the foundation for which the concepts of America were born.
England was.
And so
that was just the point I was thinking. Yes. It wasn't Europe.
But did I say Europe? I totally meant England.
Yeah, I feel like you just took the whole point I made that were English values, not European values, and you're like, yes.
I was thinking English the entire time I said yes. English is the foundation. England, rather, is the principles that were born there were the foundation for ours.
I'll just quit now, I guess. Oh man.
No, you were right. It was me mixing words up. I made the same mistake a lot of people are doing, like saying Europe is England.
Yeah. Well, that's like kind of like a myth too that the left is kind of pushed, is trying to like rework the language to try to confuse the history. When they're not trying to rewrite history, they're trying to confuse it, and that's certainly an example of that. Let's see here. So, what other topics did we want to cover on this?
So predictions of how long before it fails completely, or before they choose to leave.
Using only this garden as an indicator of how long they're going to last. Not long. Not long is my prediction. So actually, the earlier today, I think the police made a incursion into Free C.H.A.Z. back to the precinct, and they were surveying what had happened, what damage there had been to the police station, which apparently one of the city council members had given the key to the police station to the rioters, which was that should be investigated. But anyways, so the police were back.
I bet it was a strategy to prevent it from being destroyed. Probably. Probably a strategy to prevent it from being destroyed.
Maybe.
Like, well, so if it had been locked, they definitely would have destroyed it. It was maybe his game plan was, oh, maybe if we just let them in, they won't destroy it. Let's use it.
Somebody, Andrew Wilkow, doesn't know him, but knows of him. This particular council member's done other things, and he's kind of a radical. And so it wasn't about preserving the police; it was about letting the rioters in. But anyways, so while the police were there, they put up a poster that had the timeline of events, and the Antifa guys were not real happy with that because the timeline ended a week from now, and so a week from now, the police will be coming in to clean up what is going on, which seems strange that they're waiting a week, but that will probably be the end of it. Though it is entirely probable that C.H.A.Z will collapse long before the week is up.
I think so too. So I'll go with that timeline. That seems reasonable to me. So do you think this is going to change the voting scheme in Seattle at all?
Yes, I think it changed the voting scheme in that hundreds of thousands of potential voters will have moved out of the state.
So this be even more Democrat entrenched, is what you're saying?
I don't know. You got a lot of these cities. I just don't get out of the cities, guys. These cities are just miserable hellholes. Oh, jeez. I don't know, man. It's like watching another country. Yeah, we had a lot of turmoil in Europe the last decade. Certainly, towards the end of it in America, the 2008 housing crisis, that bubble of destruction drifted over to Europe a few years later, and there was a lot of riots going on in Europe at the time, towards the beginning of the last decade. And I just remember kind of watching that, oh man, that's crazy. That kind of sucks. Wow, the Europeans are nuts. And then just go back to doing my American thing over here. It kind of feels like the same thing, except for, oh wait, instead of just being across the pond, all of this crazy nonsense, these riots, this destruction is actually happening all around me. 50 cities all around me, and one of them's actually been taken over. I don't know. It's hard to know what to think about it because I have that previous experience of kind of looking at it through kind of a almost comedic kind of detached lens. Well, it doesn't really affect me. Kind of humorous watching these people kind of tear themselves apart. It's their ideology that's doing it to them. And now the same thing's happening, but it's here in America. And it's I don't really like that it's happening here in America. I got some different feelings about that. I kind of care about it a lot more, but at the end of the day, I just don't know what to do about it. It's a bunch of people, all these people that live there, even the business owners, they tacitly supported this. They endorsed this when they voted for these crazy city councilmen, these mayors. Like I said, like we were saying on the show all the time, your local elected officials are so important, yet nobody really cares about them. The left does, though. The left seems to be really good at getting their guys and gals into local positions, especially in the cities, and that's why stuff like this happens. So again, we don't live in an authoritarian regime, although C.H.A.Z has become an authoritarian regime. We live in a democracy.
Some of us live in an authoritarian regime.
Well, we live in a republic that elects our representatives democratically, and so this is late stage democracy, as the founding fathers feared it would be. That usually the end of the predictable end of democracy, whether it happens after 10 years or 100 years or 1,000 years, the predictable end is that the democracy will eventually vote to dissolve itself and to turn it into something else. And that's what's happening in these leftist cities, is that they are voting to end democracy within their zone and to live under this leftist authoritarian regime that has these jackbooted cops enforcing these, overbearing laws. That, it's funny because we don't have selling Lucy cigarette laws in my city. Apparently that's a big deal in New York, though, and somebody ended up dying over it. But the cops didn't pass that law. That was the Democratic legislature. So you got these Democrats. Again, they vote.
Who wanted to have tax? That's the reason for that was they wanted to make sure they had all the tax money.
Exactly.
Selling cigarettes.
So again, it's all this stuff is happening because the people voted for it. It's what the people wanted. And if I were to go in and say, well, no, you can't do that. Well, what authority do I have? What right do I have to tell them that they can't do this, that they can't vote for? Again, maybe there's some authority to say, well, C.H.A.Z. can't just knock over businesses and start harassing people for money, but that's on them. But in general, these things don't happen in a vacuum, right? Like Free C.H.A.Z. did not pop up in a vacuum. It popped up as the result of a long, storied history of Democrat policy and ideals running and permeating that city. History did not start yesterday, as much as the left would like to believe it. This is all the logical conclusion of what those Democratic policies have been doing, and it's the people of the city that voted for that. Same thing all across the nation and all these other cities. And so, again, it would be authoritarian of me to go in there and say, hey, you guys can't do this. Well, what authority do I have? Well, because I said you can't. Well, we voted for it. Well, I don't care. You can't do it. I don't like it. That's not what I believe. I'm libertarian. I love the Republic and the Constitution and the democratic way of voting. I think that's of all the bad ways that humans govern themselves, this is not the worst. So I don't really feel like I've got the authority to say, well, this is you can't do this. So you guys need to stop electing these people. Well, I can recommend hey, I think that we've got a better ideology, but at the end of the day, if this is what they want to vote for, I don't know what to tell them. I don't know if I want to feel bad about it, or if it's even my place to tell them that they can't have this. This is what they're voting for. If this is what they want, the best I can do, as you said last week when I was black-pilled on the last Saturday show, is the best that we can do is what we're doing right now, is just have discussions about it, go through, well, I think that your ideas are bad because it leads to gardens that look like this. And
no
rape.
gardens ever look like this.
And rape.
That's also a problem.
Yeah. Well, it's only a problem when it happens to people. But, and explain why I think our ideas are a little bit better. Again, if only there was a system that supplied the goods that were demanded at a rate that was related to how much supply there was. If only there was a way of organizing an economy like that, which there turns out that there is. It's called capitalism, and we'll flip back to this list here. Capitalism. We're not short on body lotion and shoes under capitalism. And after renouncing capitalism for 3 days, they're suddenly out of all the stuff. It's kind of, there might be a little correlation there.
I think we should probably recognize also how we got to this point in the first place, because this didn't happen this year or last year. This is a product of multiple generations of people being not taught the history of how our country came to be, why we have the system we have, why we have a republic in the first place, and why capitalism is the system that we have. A lot of people don't know the virtues of the republic and capitalism, and they were also taught actively that those things are evil, and that's why we have generations of younger people who they want to overthrow our country because they think it is the root of all evil. Absolutely. And we let that happen. We let the schools, let our universities, our institutes of higher learning, which I think is a label we should take away, because I think they weren't teaching.
Yeah, I mean, oh God, what the hell's his name? The funny Canadian professor. Jordanson? Peterson? No. Why am I blanking on that name? Anyways, I'm sure I'll think of it. But he's I'm sure someone in chat will help me out there. Jordan Peterson, there we go. Yeah, Jordan Peterson. Okay. Yeah, Jordan Peterson said, it doesn't make sense that, the society would be subsidizing a revolution. And he was talking about the universities and the Marxism that is clearly permeating the university, and they're getting it state funded. And it's absolute insanity that the state is funding the revolution. That needs to stop right now. Thank you, Shadow Wolf.
You think he's funny?
He's funny in like the way that like old guys are like kind of funny. And he's just like, oh man, look at Jordan Peterson.
Like, I was sure you were talking about Jordan Peterson, but like I don't think he's like a comedian.
No, he's not. He's not funny like a comedian way. He's just like he's kind of funny because he'll say stuff that's like very blunt and obvious, but nobody's allowed to say it. But he'll like explain it in like a very like succinct way, and like explain it well. But it's just funny like the way that he'll say these things that are like really obvious. Yeah, it's not even that they're obvious, but like he'll explain stuff that like should be obvious but isn't obvious.
Or the society, certain parts of society are trying to ignore that obvious thing. Like gender exists.
It's a construct that biology constructed.
Yes, it's a made up, of our genes, but whatever. So reality doesn't matter to them. It's all about their feels. Back to C.H.A.Z. though, and their feels. So end of this week, are we talking like what, Monday? C.H.A.Z. will be dead. The experiment will be done.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens over the weekend. Certainly more rape probably will happen.
Loads of rape. Yes.
Clearly they're out of Sprite, so that's going to be rough. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens here. I'm curious. I don't remember what the specific timeline the police had was, but I do know that it was within the next 7 days. It's probably sometime next week. I guess we'll see what happens. Probably, I don't know. Is there any statues in Seattle? Probably try and pull those down. I'm wondering if towards the end though, which tends to happen, is that as regimes collapse, they inevitably become more violent. They kind of feel those walls closing in. So I wonder if, to the extent that I don't want to downplay the damage. The damage is pretty severe. I mean, the amount of graffiti is that like every square inch has been covered in paint. You can't just, after having a couple hundred, maybe thousands of people living in the streets for that long with all the businesses shut down and no civil services available. You can't just bounce those few blocks back into like full capacity right away. I mean, the damage for this is going to take the rest of the summer to clean up. And so, again, and that's not trying to downplay the current damage, but I wonder that as the walls close in, maybe they'll start escalating what we hadn't seen quite yet, which was like wholesale burning down of buildings and stuff like that. That may return as their territory gets removed. So we'll see. I do know that C.H.A.Z. has also been trying to figure out what their next steps are too. So they put out this like a brief, I guess, and their three next possible steps that they're discussing are taking the precinct, because the police precinct is kind of on the outskirts of their territory. It's not really like in the center of it, and so they're wondering if they should like expand it. They're talking about relocating C.H.A.Z., which I guess I don't know. Can you just relocate a country? That sounds weird. And then also dissolving C.H.A.Z. in favor of diverse direct action, which I don't even know what the fuck that means. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, it sounds like a bunch of buzzwords, not actual meaning anything. So they're probably going to go with that option because it means like a retreat where they are trying to save face, right?
Strategic retreat.
Yeah, but they're not really gaining anything by retreating. It's not really
C.H.A.Z. will live on in their hearts.
Yes. C.H.A.Z. is less of a place and more of a state of mind. But closing shot.
But by the way, explain this picture to somebody in January. I saw that with like Nancy Pelosi and all the Dems like kneeling with the African scarves on and the face masks, and it was like, explain this picture to somebody in January.
They would never understand.
I'd be like, what? Like the context of that is just so thick with context of like specifically the most recent 4 months. It's like, you just like, there's nothing that relates to January.
David Duff says that diverse direct action means splitting up and making lots of places crap, not just the one place crap.
Well, they already did that with all the cities. Howitzer says rape, murder, arson, and rape. That's probably in that order.
So, like, my closing shot on this is that the one thing that communism will never have in short supply, ever have in short supply, is totalitarian violence and rape. They will always have that in spades.
They do need some Jordan B. Peterson. Howitzer says, Jordan Peterson always tells them to clean their room. That's like Jordan Peterson's like big thing is clean your room. Like, and these guys have like uncleaned whole city blocks. Certainly Jordan needs to get down there and tell them to get their act together. I don't know. I think it's gonna. I think it'll continue on through the weekend. I think that it will. They'll like try and say it's surviving, but I don't think it really will until the police get there. And I think towards the end, you're gonna see kind of the trust fund kids are going to. Peel off a little bit, probably go back home and get their Uncrustables, even though they're 27 and still living at home. And the more violent Antifa will be hanging around and probably doing a scorched earth retreat. That is my prediction, that there'll be a sudden burst of violence and fire. And I would say there'd be a burst in rape, but the rape is probably more of like a constant background noise. Very loud noise, but mostly screaming. Where's the feminist, by the way? I was listening to Andrew Wilkow today, and he was asking, he's like, "Where's the feminists? They're saying there was rapes going on there. Where's the feminists at that are upset about this? Why is the media not reporting about the rapes? We've got you talk about rape culture there. Why is nobody upset about that?" But we saw this happen again during the Occupy protests. We see this with different lefty organizations all the time. It's pretty. Again, where two or more leftists are gathered, rape.
Just look at Hollywood.
For sure.
And Democrat presidents.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's all I had on this topic. We'll, I guess, see you guys tomorrow for the news recap. We'll go a little more in depth into real news rather than just mocking communists.
That's real nice.
I mean, it's but it wasn't this long of a story, but it just was fun to chat about.
Yeah. This garden, man.
It's sad. It's pretty damn sad.
These plants.
I imagine they actually had a real open space to build a commune based on this one little garden. I don't think they'd survive.
I did catch a Twitter thread that was from an actual farmer, and he had this decently long Twitter thread about all the stuff that they were doing wrong, and it's hilarious. Hey Slowpoke, we streamed tonight because we did not stream last night, and we did not stream last night because we were streaming tonight. Circular reasoning. All right, guys.
Okay, you can blame me. It was completely my work schedule that got fucked. So it was me. I apologize, but because it's in Fox's contract to anything that's wrong with me it's actually his fault. You can blame him. Send all the angry emails to Fox. Thank you. See you guys tomorrow.
My email is contactdirewolf@gmail.com.